Welcome to Not What I Thought. I'm Erika.
I'm Yolanda.
And I'm Becca. We're therapists, entrepreneurs, and perfectly imperfect humans.
We first met during a business owner retreat where we became fast friends because we're not afraid to be real and ask the hard questions about life. What we thought it would be like, how messy it actually is, and the courage it takes to create the life we want.
We continue to build our friendship and personal growth through our own retreats. We find the deepest connection in sharing our struggles and finding what we have in common rather than what divides us.
We're breaking down hard topics on our podcast and together have conversations about what it takes to find real talk, real support, and real rest for professional women. We're glad you're here. Join us on your favorite podcast platform.
All right, friends. So we have been batching some recordings and boy, we are hitting them out of the park today.
All the taboo heavy topics today.
We've talked about money, we've talked about divorce, so why not? Let's talk about sex.
If we didn't already get the E for explicit on our podcast with the cursing, this one will.
Who gives that anyway? Do we like self-select the E? I don't know how that works. But anyway,
we probably should just put it on.
Yeah, it's just automatically. Yes, it's us. So yeah, beware. Put your headphones in. Hide your children.
Or listen to your episode about talking to your children about sex.
Oh, yes. So as we do, my husband and I are always, looking to learn and grow. And why not? Esther Perel, who is, if you're not familiar with her, has done amazing work around relationships and sexuality. And if you haven't seen her TED Talk, look that up. She's got books, she's got all kinds of good things. And she recently released this e-course on sex and desire. So, of course, we did. We bought the course on sex and desire. And I was really intrigued. It's really fantastic. So check it out as a resource. But she started one of the early sessions, and we're still working through it, but she started one of the early sessions on what sex and desire is and it isn't, and like myths around sex and desire and sensuality and eroticism. And I was like, I don't even know what eroticism is, Esther. Like, can you start with a working definition of that? So should we go through them real quick?
Yes, but let me just pause.
Okay.
And say, you said a couple of times in there, of course we did this. Of course that's what we do next.
Oh.
And I just want to like highlight that and say, I love it. Like that's what a successful relationship looks like, that you're still learning and growing. Because I think in a lot of relationships, that's not a given.
Okay, so yes, thank you for pointing that out. And just a little backstory. My husband and I have been together since high school. And our lives and our bodies look very different now than they did when we were in our teens. And, we have ridden the highs and lows of like all things sex and desire and sensuality. And also your girl here is navigating through all things menopause as well. So yeah, it is an intentionality, and like we both deserve a a different sex life than what we're having right now. Not that it's a bad sex life, right?
I just love that you said that. We both deserve it. Yeah.
Yeah. We both deserve something different. So yeah, thank you for slowing things down, Becca, and allowing me to add that as part of some context. And because I think generally speaking, and the three of us are work a lot with couples, and we know in our work with couples don't tend to have conversations about sex because in our society we aren't really taught how to do that. I think more and more we are. But yeah, I mean, I think this has been a great resource for us. And starting with these myths, which are so interesting because, there's my rational mind knows these things, and then hearing them also in the context of like my marriage and this relationship, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, okay. So I'll go down the list and then I'll highlight the one that I wanted to focus on today. How's that sound?
Great.
Okay. Myth number one, sex is penetrative and ends in joint orgasm. Okay, myth number one, sex has to be penetration and like you're supposed to both have an orgasm at the same time. Myth. Myth number two, sex only happens when you're quote unquote in the mood, when things are perfect. And by proxy, sex is a reward for perfection. Guess which one of the myths your girl's going to come back to? Recovering perfectionist here. We'll be revisiting that
A
one.
little hint for where we're going with this.
Just a little Easter egg drop right there. Myth number three, in heterosexual relationships, the man always initiates and should always be interested and ready. Myth number four, a sexless relationship is a failed relationship. Myth number five, sexual problems are always a result of relationship problems. If you improve the relationship, the sex will improve. I mean, I think my husband and I are a pretty solid example of like how that myth is inaccurate because we've got a really solid relationship and we want to make it even better by improving our sex life. Myth number six, in the beginning, sex is hot and then fades over time. And then myth number seven, greater intimacy leads to greater sexuality. I'm just curious what lands for each of you before.
Before we go back to,
Yeah.
Probably the relationship one that,
If you got a good relationship, the sex will be.
yeah, because we've done so much work with clients, right? Actually, I think I've heard all of these, but like
Right.
clients, but that's probably the number one. If we're not having sex, there must be
Something wrong.
we're falling apart. How are we going to figure this out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say more times than that. No, that's not the issue.
That would be my husband's one that he's working
I guess, okay, so I would say I resonate with what both of you said. And if
Mhm.
I'm picking another one, it's a sexless relationship is a failed relationship.
on. Yeah. Actually, that's the one that Shaman most resonates with. Yeah.
Yeah. And that like on disentangling those ideas that like we could have the relationship be great and the sex isn't, and they can be separate things, or we cannot have sex and our relationship is still good.
Mhm.
You know, I think there's a lot to be said there for people who are asexual or demisexual or have sexual trauma or whatever. And it's like,
Right.
there's so much shame connected with
Yes.
relationships that's like, I think, yeah, it just doesn't need to be there if both people are content with where things are at, you know?
Mhm. I think each one of these myths could be an episode in and of their
For
own.
sure. For sure. Yeah.
Maybe we make note of these other myths and circle back around to them. But I will say I grew up in a very conservative home where there wasn't a lot of conversation about sex, only to say don't have it because don't have it prior to marriage because you might get pregnant, and then how would that look? And then after marriage, it's a duty. And if it's a duty, then it's not something that you'll necessarily enjoy because that doesn't matter, which is really shitty. It's a really shitty narrative to carry forward, right? Like we all deserve better than that, friends. So I think that between that and like sex is the reward for perfectionism. And the way that Esther broke it down in the video in her course is that, when things are perfect, when you're not feeling bloated, when your body's the exact right size, when the dynamics of the relationship are perfect, when your kids are behaving, when you have, had a really productive day at work, but not too productive that you're not too tired to, to be able to swing from the chandeliers and like all of that stuff, right? For whatever reason, that as I heard it come out of her mouth landed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how many times have I thought sex would be kind of cool, but
Mm,
I'm kind of tired, or, oh, we just ate that big meal, or like, whatever, I got a busy day tomorrow, or whatever it is.
I'm thinking about times in the past where I maybe had some judgment around a partner wanting sex and me thinking like, well, how could you want sex right now? Because there's this problem in the relationship, or because whatever, the dishes are dirty, right? I mean, I don't know, that wouldn't be my issue, but right, like,
Right.
that stuff comes
Yeah.
up, and it's the flip side of that. It's like things
Yeah.
aren't perfect. And if I believe that sex is a reward for perfection, then I may be shaming towards my partner who is asking for sex right now. Like,
Okay,
how could you think that?
you had to give it that perspective, Becca. Thanks. That was actually really helpful. Thank you very much. I'm not joking.
You're welcome.
Filing that one away. Shaman, when you edit this, let's have a conversation.
Don't ever say I don't got you back, Shaman.
Yeah.
The perfection, it's definitely an interesting one that shows up in our relationship, but it's more my husband thinks if not everything went perfect during the day that I'm going to say no. He just assumes that automatically. And so then we're not even having a conversation about it.
Mhm.
And so if I bring it up or initiate, then he's like, well, but you worked until 8:30. I'm like, okay, I don't, what does that mean?
Mhm.
Overtime has taken me a while to figure out that if there's an amount of barriers in place, then it's not even an option.
Yeah.
For you or for him? Or maybe both.
Probably both.
This is reminding me of the book The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. Have
Mhm.
either of you read that one?
Mhm.
Okay. Just so excellent in this idea that like our body does not have to be perfect in order for us. I think that the connection with at least that one part of the book is that your body doesn't have to be perfect for you to enjoy sex or get to have sex that you want or get to have boundaries
Yeah.
in like using protection or what does or doesn't
Mhm.
feel good to you or whatever. It's like there also is a perfectionism in that we feel like if we aren't perfect in this way, then we're not allowed to speak up for ourselves or to say what would feel good or yeah.
And it's interesting because this is where I come back to, like, I know that in my rational cognitive mind and
Mhm.
in my emotional brain, especially in the moment, it goes out the window. And I'm also noticing how the perfectionism in like other parts of my life, I mean, that's the conversation anyway, right? But it's like part of the part of the course comes with a workbook to work through. And it's like, you know, what's one thing that you could do differently? And I'm like, oh shit, this is about to upset the entire apple cart, because that means more play and lightheartedness, right? And like pull that thread back through.
Where does it go? Keep
It
pulling it.
goes to having more play and lightheartedness and less feeling of pressure. And how much am I how much of my narrative is, gosh, there's so much pressure about the sex, when it is more like, can you give yourself more time for play and pleasure? But because you haven't done that in your life, you don't necessarily know what that means,
Not just in the sexual realm, but
not just in the sexual realm. So it is bringing terms like sensuality and pleasure and eroticism. And it's like kind of my exploration around play, in hobbies. I'm like, can you give me a definition of hobby? Because I don't know what that is. Um, it's allowing that to, it's acknowledging that and allowing that to seep into this part of my life too. And especially as my body changes, right? And it takes the time, like pleasure takes the time that it takes. But if I'm adding to what I perceive as pressure, if I'm adding my own pressure, like TikTok, we got things to do.
I wonder about that part with pressure and the I mean, it's wound in with the perfectionism too, but when you were talking about um, play and pleasure, I wonder if that's really what our partners want from us. Meaning, we come into the encounter with all of this pressure and perfectionism around how sex is supposed to be, and it can't be this and whatever, whatever. And it's like, I wonder if we are, there may be in some relationships that is the case, that the pressure is also coming from the partner. But I gotta believe that at least some of the time, it's
Mhm.
stuff we're putting on ourselves, and maybe what our partner really would want from us is to
Mhm.
just play. That's all I really want, right? But I'm like blocking, maybe I'm blocking in a particular way, and my partner wants play with me. They would be totally happy with this pleasure part and exploration and the sensuality that I block myself off from because I feel like I'm not allowed, or that's, yeah, we're not perfect enough to get to do that yet.
Well, and I think you really hit on also like the way that I see relationships and the relational work that I do is these patterns. And so as we're doing this course, I'm noticing like the pattern between my husband and myself, where it does feel like pressure. And so I shift into that space and I concede. And so when I do that, when I'm in that pattern, then there is no room for play or pressure,
Pleasure, yeah.
pleasure, because we're wrapped up in that pattern. And so it's a little bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see really easily, and this is maybe coming less from personal experience and more from like couples that I've worked with, but I can see really easily a dynamic playing out where um, in a hetero relationship, the female partner maybe is feeling this pressure
Mhm.
and the perfectionism part, and she feels maybe awkward about like, can I go to the place of just play
Right.
and fun? And is that going to feel then even more of I'm asking for my needs because what he really wants is this other thing, when really at the end of the day, it may be that that's all he really wants too. It's like, yeah, I just want to play and connect with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think we experienced that actually for a while in our relationship. Probably after I had my daughter, this pressure, concede, not engage, kind of shut off, shut down, and all of those things that you were just talking about. But I think also on my husband's side, there were some expectations that he
Mhm.
had to sit with and feel it and really process. Like, is this realistic, or is this really what I want? And we didn't talk about it in a healthy way, I don't think. And
Yeah.
so when we were able to start communicating about it in a healthy way, I think that's when it clicked for him. Oh, that's actually not what I want. I do just want to um,
Mhm.
be able to be together, to play, to explore, to have
Mhm.
pleasure. And that might look extremely different than what I thought it was going to look like.
Yeah, it also, yeah, and this has been like an ongoing pattern, but like the focus on it ebbs and flows, and like it's different now with working through menopausal stuff. And also like on the flip side of um there was part of the conversation was I actually am asking you for these things that are pleasurable.
Mm.
And what I make up is that you're having a hard time taking that in and giving me those things because it's not penetrative intercourse. And that's what you're defining as pleasure
Yeah.
and sex. And like, what would it be like? How would that change things if we started there and you actually did acknowledge that as like, I'm telling you that I enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
and sustaining that, because in the past I would concede. I'd say it, and then the pressure, let's just get it over with, let's go. And not that that's the case all the time. I mean, we get into a good pattern as well, right? We've just noticed this one recently bubbling up in a new and different way.
But I think from couples I've worked with, that is extremely common, right? Okay, let's just get when the partner feels like, well, I guess this is just a chore to them, or and nobody wants to feel like they're a chore or a burden for their partner.
And I'm really glad that both of you brought up that your male partners have had work to do also, because I realized that, like, we're three cis women here talking about, like, oh, here's all the work that women have to do, and it isn't all on us, right? Like, there is a way where sometimes the pressure that you are perceiving is real, or it might be, I'm presenting it in this really nice way, like, oh, maybe your partner really would love that play, and just let's just pleasure each other way. And maybe not, maybe that's some of the work that your partner needs to work through on these myths, to like find that kind of stuff might be enjoyable for them also. So yeah, I just appreciate you bringing up the other side.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, Esther does say that these myths are kind of in like heterosexual dynamics, and also like there's portions of it that play out regardless of the type of sexual relationships you have. Yeah. So we're rolling up our sleeves. We're through module 1. Who knows?
Where was
The one.
Esther, I really need for you to give me more definitions about eroticism and fantasy and like.
We can come back if you get clear.
Right? Yeah.
Our next recording session, we'll do one of those.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's inviting, like, these are the really, so I had a conversation with a couple recently, and we were talking about sex, and we were talking about, masturbation and things like masturbation and pornography, like all of that stuff. And they're squirming on my couch and they're like, this is uncomfortable. And I'm like, I know, right? It is. And here we are. We're having the conversation. So yay us. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought this training and some of these topics into our conversation, because I know one of the things I recommend for clients is Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, and I haven't read the newer one, which is more maintaining.
It's a really good one too.
Come together.
Yeah.
I've got that one. It's right over there, actually.
Yeah.
We're gonna dive into that one.
Yeah.
But I think that one does touch into sensuality, eroticism, and that sort of thing. But I feel like it's kind of more mechanical. This might not be quite the word I'm looking for. It's more logistics based, scientifically based. And so I like this idea of, okay, yes, we can understand brakes and accelerators and how the body works and how we can talk to each other about that. And there's this whole other world that we can open up with eroticism or fantasy or these other pieces that I actually don't think a lot of people talk about.
Yeah. And a lot of it is the relationship between me and getting a better understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We need all of it. We need to know all of it.
Yeah. So there we are, our conversation about sex.
We made it through.
Not like any of us were really worried, though.
No.
What does your heart know to be true, Yolanda?
My heart knows that, as it's interesting because it's uncomfortable, but yet it's not uncomfortable, right? That as uncomfortable as exploring the topic can be and having the conversations, I circle back to what I said earlier, that we both deserve, I think part of being in a long-term relationship is understanding that you're going to renegotiate the relationship as you go along, right? There are lots of like logistical things that like the relationship when you are first married is different than the relationship when you first have kids, and et cetera, et cetera. And like renegotiating the terms of the sexuality, the sensuality, the eroticism in the relationship also is important. How about you, Erika?
My heart knows that it's okay to want to have really great sex, which is never something I think I thought I would say out loud to lots of people, but
Yeah.
actually a really good show on HBO. I think it's called Great Sex, but it's a sex coach and she works with couples. And I don't know, I really like the message of like, yeah, let's have some really great sex. Why are we settling
Yeah.
for just okay? Who wants that, you know? And we can work towards it. We can do things together and work towards it. And I think that's through having a open and honest and transparent conversation that sometimes, you know, it might hurt to hear some of the things that our
Yeah.
partner has to say, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We will figure it out relationally together.
Yeah. And I do appreciate you highlighting that. That's one of Esther's things, that she's like, in order to want to have sex, you have to have sex that you want to have. You have to be having sex that you want to have, like good sex. So, yeah. How about for you, Becca?
My heart knows that sex is not a reward for perfection, that it's okay to have pleasure and play and feel good in my body, and that can exist outside of a heteronormative patriarchal view of how sex and relationships have to be.
I think that that's the way, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of your orientation, it's got to be outside of the
Outside of that framework, yes.
Amen to that. Say it louder for the people in the back. Thanks, guys, for talking through this with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Love you guys.
I love you too. Enjoyable as always. We are so excited to announce our upcoming live event. Join us online on January 19th, 2025, where we'll guide you through the sometimes shame and guilt-ridden experience of setting goals for the year. We'll have real talk about how goal setting can lead to burnout, and real support for visioning a 2025 that includes real rest, connection, and play. Go to notwhatithought.com to register. We hope to see you there.